Have you got exams? Are you really stressed? You need help focusing? Stay tuned. Peace and blessings. Hope you're all well. So today we're looking at exam stress and how to deal with the clutter in your mind and get some focus in. You first need to make sure that you've had a good amount of sleep and you're eating and drinking well, because your mind needs a good amount of sleep to be able to function well. So what I would say is, before you consider even sitting down at your desk to start studying, you need to first declutter everything physically. All the stuff that's on your desk, remove it, put it somewhere else so it's not distracting. Just have a clear desk with what you need to study with only, nothing else. Try and study in a room that's separate from your break time, basically. So you don't want to be studying in the same room that you're going to be having a break in. You want to physically change positions when you do have a break later. Also, what you need to do is make sure that you have good lighting, you're wearing comfortable clothing when you're studying, and also your room is well ventilated, so it's not too stuffy, you don't feel drowsy, it's not overheated, and it's not too cold. You need it to be just right and comfortable for you, because you could be studying for quite a while in total. However, you would be expected to have short breaks, but we'll go into that. So now that you've decluttered your desk, you need to think about decluttering your mind. Usually when we start any task, 100 things come into our head, so we need to try and stop that from happening so we can have our full focus on what we're about to do. So when you sit down at your desk, okay, which is now going to be a nice clean empty desk, have a piece of paper or some stick-it notes and a pen, and just sit for 2 minutes and just try and think about nothing, because usually when you try and think about nothing, everything comes in your mind. And at that point, one by one, everything that comes into your mind, note it down on this piece of paper or a post-it note. For a couple of minutes, just let everything out. At this point, when you've finished and you've given yourself a few minutes to kind of declutter your mind, I wouldn't even look at the post-it notes or the notepad at that point. Literally just turn it over or put it aside, out of your reach, as well as your phone and any other distractions that you may have. Before we work, a good idea would be to get out another plain piece of paper and kind of do a spider diagram or something, just to jot down all the topics that you want to cover in the day. Keep a variety, because what you want to be doing is studying small amounts, around half an hour, and then taking small breaks, about 10 minutes at the most. Not too long breaks, unless you're obviously going to have lunch or dinner or whatever. So half hour slots would be good. At maximum, I would say 45 minutes. Any more than that, you're going to start to get a bit worn out. You won't have the level of energy that you need to continue to focus. So looking into that, you'd know roughly how many topics you'll be able to cover in the day if you're doing that amount of sessions. Say you're doing about 6 different subjects in a day. Draw a spider diagram with those 6 different subjects. And if you wish, you can also then draw out further, focusing on the different topics within those subjects. What you can do is maybe keep some stick-it notes with timings of roughly what time you feel you want to tackle those particular subjects. So roughly you have some kind of a schedule for the day. So now obviously, because you've been thinking about the different types of topics, you've already started changing your focus. So what you want to do is get up, maybe do something really quick, some really quick exercises like going up and down the stairs 2-3 times, or jogging on the spot, or kind of doing some stretches, anything that kind of gets your blood going for about a couple of minutes. And once you've done that, you're actually ready to go. You already know by now what topic you're going to be studying first, and you're ready to go. So when you study, a good idea would be to make sure that you fit your life around your study, not study around your life. What we tend to do is do all the things in our life that we need to do and then squeeze in study here and there. And what happens there is that the focus is not on the study. The focus is very much torn apart on the things that you have done and the things that you need to do. It's a good idea to try and study at the same time every day, so you're actually in some kind of a routine, because routine helps with focus as well. If something is a routine and you know you're going to do it, in some ways you've prepared for it mentally. And so when you do, you're ready for it. There's no surprises by different kinds of thoughts coming in your head or different tasks that you feel need to be done. Sometimes when you're reading, you come across things that you just don't understand. And it's difficult to find time at that point to understand. So a good thing to do would be just read it again and again and again and kind of repeat it. So in some ways you're remembering the concept of what's being said. You may not fully understand it, and as soon as you get a chance, then try and look into that. However, what you don't want to do is cram. Cramming is very short-lived. You won't be able to retain that information for very long. If you're going to force yourself to learn something that you just don't understand, that activity of trying to force yourself will mean that you're actually not going to achieve anything, because if you're learning under pressure, you're not actually going to retain any of that information. Another good way of learning a particular topic is by, as you're reading, write questions. So whilst you're reading a textbook, for example, keep a notepad next to you, and as you're reading, literally list all these questions. You can even write the answers underneath, but you can use those questions later on when you want to test yourself as a quick revision right near to the exam. So there are different apps you can use. You can input the questions and the answers into the app, and as you're on the run, as you're carrying on your daily life, or just before your exam the night before, you can go through that app and it will kind of throw out different questions to you, and you can answer them, and hopefully that will give you some different way of revising rather than just plain reading reams and reams of notes that you've written beforehand. It's good to learn through different ways, using different senses. So for example, if you're learning biology, you could use some videos. There might be lots of videos on different topics of biology that you're learning. So you'll be using your vision. You'll be listening to the content that's given to you. There might even be subtitles. So not only will you be looking at pictures or people doing things that can help you remember, so your imagery is there, you're also maybe reading the subtitles if they're subtitles. So if you think about how many senses you've already used, that's how more concrete that learning will be, rather than just the one type of learning, which may be just reading or reading and writing. And what you could even do is watch the video, pause the video, write yourself the question and the answer from what you've just learnt. So that way you've put in even more styles of learning into one particular part of learning. It's better to have used all those different styles of learning early on, so that by the time you get to your exam, you are now preparing to work things through by yourself. So once you've tried all these different styles of learning, you will know what kinds of ways of learning are working for you best, because hopefully if you're doing past papers along the way, you'll know on which subjects you've used different types of learning, how the different style of learning has helped you in working through the past papers. Once you know that, then that's really going to be helpful for you in the last few days of making use of that time to the full before you have your exams. What you will find is if you leave big gaps in your learning, you will forget. If you're doing it too often, you may become bored of that topic, and so you may abandon that topic altogether. So what you want to do is kind of learn in intervals. There are times when you just feel so low, you feel, you know what, I can't do this. This is becoming really difficult. It's too much pressure. You get into a panic state. The best thing to do then is to actually stop and think, why am I doing this? What you need to know is, what is the connection between your learning and your dreams? Yes? How is the learning that you're doing at that moment in time going to help you to progress in your life, in your career, to achieve your dreams? And I think that's the key. Each time you feel low, just go back to that and think, how is this going to help me in the future? Why am I doing it? Rereading your notes itself is not always very helpful. So maybe while you're rereading, summarize your notes further, write some bullet points, so you're actually condensing what you need to learn on the day before your exam, for example, you've already got notes which are further and further condensed and smaller, which will hopefully just act as triggers for you to remember. A bit like what we're saying about putting questions down. Put questions down and answers so that when you question yourself, you're able to try and actively remember what you've learnt. It's that slight exertion of pressure on your mind of trying to find your answers that will help you to kind of embed that information. And that's known as active recall. Another good way to prepare for the actual exam day or to kind of embed your learning is to write condensed bullet points that you've started to put together, to write them on post-it notes and literally stick them around the house, especially the ones that you are struggling to remember, certain topics, certain key points that you are really struggling to remember. It's actually good to stick them anywhere. So stick them on the sofa, stick them on the bathroom mirror, stick them I don't know, where your shoe rack is, so that as you're going to do different tasks, you're constantly learning along the way. So this will help you to learn, again, repetitively in intervals, and it will also be very random. So it won't be boring, it will be a bit more exciting. I guess eventually you're going to remember that there's a particular stick-it note on the fridge or on the shoe rack. So it would be good to get somebody else actually to swap them about for you. So when you get to that particular part of the house where you know that there might be a stick-it note, you'll be surprised with a different question. And even just that aspect of surprise and reading the question and thinking harder, again, puts a bit of effort into the thought process and will help embed the information that you're taking in at that time. Another thing that's particularly helped me during my studies is actually when I'm writing my revision notes, as I condense them smaller and smaller, I actually, next to each bullet point, draw a picture of that particular thing, whether it is a diagram, a biology diagram, or whether it is an explanation of something that I've read and understood it, what I have visioned when I closed my eyes when I read that particular thing, for example in English. I would then try and draw that, whether it's in stickmen or anything, but it would just be a trigger for me, because again, that's a different visual way of learning. So if you've got picture memory, for example, that particular way of learning will be very key for you. I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you need any more information, do place a comment in the comments box, and also say whether you've liked it or not, and do subscribe. Thank you.